Welcome to the Jamodi podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. I can't wait to ask this question because one, I feel like I already know a little bit of the direction you might go. And kind of like you said before, it's always fun to hear all different types of coaches teach their style of play and learn new things. But it is fun when you already feel or know like you're aligned in a certain way. I've heard you teach at clinics before, the way that you think about offense and basketball. So what's your favorite style to play and teach?
Yeah, such a good question. I love playing fast, and that used to be my standard answer. Like how fast can we play while still being under control in game situations? And then a mentor of mine really challenged me one day. He said, "Matt, well, why do you love playing fast so much?" And I had to think about it. Like, what is it? Is it like I just like to see bigger numbers on the scoreboard? Is it just I get bored because of my ADHD kind of brain that we all have from time to time as coaches? Like, what is it? And I actually rewound to when I was a player and realized when I would just shoot the ball and let it fly, and it felt so good coming off my fingers, watching it go in, when I would drive to the rim, draw contact, finish, go to the free throw line. Like, those were the moments where I was so confident as a player. And really, just again, growing up as a product of the 90s, it was very slow. Like, we were in the flex offense. Mm-hmm. If the post player didn't touch the ball in position, we were coming out of the game like that. And great. There's so many different ways to play basketball. And that way is not wrong. I just found for me as a player, the more often I could feel confident, the more confident I'd be throughout that game, throughout that season, throughout my career. And so going back to style of plays, I want my players to feel that as often as possible, is just to feel, that perfect moment, the ball just comes off your fingertips and you're already smiling because, it's just a bucket. When it's confidence on the defensive end because they've contested a shot, forced a miss, whatever it is. And so the more often we can do that in games, the more successful I felt like we're going to be, just so when things do go wrong, it's not this thing that happens all the time. I know it's just as human beings, right, Matt? When we fail, when we make mistakes, we tend to sit in it. Referencing PGC basketball, Dick DeVille called it the droop, right? You make a mistake, energy goes down, we droop, we're frustrated, we're upset. And so just finding a way where my players had to get through that quicker, and where I coach had to get through that quicker. If I'm still upset and frustrated and yelling and screaming about a turnover, but we're already playing at the other end, I have to shift my focus really quick. So I think that's why I enjoy that style of play so much, is because you forget the frustrations very quickly. You have to forget and get past the mistakes. And man, what a great life lesson for all of us when we drop the ball, when we have a turnover, when our morning doesn't go very well, how quick for him lifting pressure on the defense, have to make decisions quickly and uncomfortably. And I love that style of play. It makes me so excited. Because I also think, my favorite thing to do during games is to watch. Let's work super hard in practice. Let's level up the team in practice, and then the game, let's go enjoy ourselves. And I think that style of play is conducive to that as well.
Before you go on though, because you said a nugget there, that a question that I think every one of us has to ask, which is, we have this style of play that we've chosen, that we feel comfortable with, all this, but ask the question, why are you playing that? Mm-hmm. Why are you choosing that? Because the things that you rattled off, is it about seeing points on the scoreboard? Is it about controlling you have to be able to answer those things. And I think early on, why do we play fast? We wanted to see a certain amount of threes go up. We wanted to see the scoreboard go up. But why? What's the point? Whatever your style of play is, in anything in life, right? Know your why. So that question right there that's a huge one for coaches to ask in almost every area in choices that they make.
For sure. I think that's so helpful when it comes to defining players' roles. I think that's one of the hardest things we do as coaches is not, actually it's probably pretty easy for us to define the roles, but to get the buy-in to those roles we defined. As I've been working with coaches one-on-one the last 8 or 9 months, I probably get that question more than anything else. How do you buy in with these roles? And actually just this morning, I was listening to a podcast that Andrew Bogut was on, And he was talking about when he went from the Milwaukee Bucks and he was shooting 15, 25 a game, 25 times a game as a young NBA player, to when he went to the Mark Jackson Warriors early in Steph Curry's career. And the way that Mark Jackson was, hey, if Steph's hot, he's going to shoot. And Andrew Bogut talked about how he had to realize very quickly that every player on the team doesn't have the same role. That if he tried to shoot a lot like he did in Milwaukee, he was coming off the floor pretty quick. But if he was setting great screens for Steph, if he was protecting the rim on defense, if he was, diving on the floor for loose balls, he was going to rarely come off the floor. And then he also talked about how like players on their team like Harrison Barnes would struggle because for maybe 3 quarters, you're not up game. And all of a sudden, the 4th quarter, when Steph's getting double and triple teamed, you're expected to hit down the shot that you haven't touched the ball in 25 minutes and how hard that is. And he wasn't Jackson at all, but he talked about how when Steve Kerr came in and talked about the ball finding energy, and the more you touch it, even if you're not shooting it, you're touching it more often. You get feel. And I think that goes back to the style that I love to coach, and I know you love to coach. Everybody can have a larger role. If we're shooting as a team, we typically had a goal every year is a little bit different, but maybe it's to take 33s a game. Well, if we're taking 33s and our opponent's only taking 12, that's 18 more opportunities for players who touch the ball, to shoot the ball, to feel a part of our offense. And so there now, all of a sudden, we can expand roles. If we're averaging 70 points a game, we need a lot more guys to score than if we're averaging 42 points a game. And so then I think our coach asked me all the time, like, how'd you get buy-in? It's like, well, I watched Matt Saman coach, and I understood that if you get a lot of guys on the floor game after game, a lot of moments for them, and a lot of opportunity for them to shoot or to score, like there's going to be more buy-in when you ask them to defend more tonight, when you ask them to protect the rim more tonight than normal. So yeah, I think that's another great benefit of that style of play is you can expand roles for players on your team that might typically just have a small role.
Yeah, 2 things. I like the fact I'll always like hearing that NBA teams and NBA coaches struggle with the same things that we do at the high school level. So they struggle with role identification and buy-in just like we do. Like that should just kind of lift, a little bit of pressure off our shoulders, that those are millionaires and dudes that it's their life and they still struggle. And then I think you're right on the money with, if we're just talking about playing fast and I feel like it's the system to help get more buy-in from all of your players. If it's a style offensively, a style of play where only 1 or 2 guys are really going to shoot it or are allowed to shoot. Like I've been told, I'm just a screener. Why in the world would I stay after and shoot more? Like I know what I'm going to be doing. If you opened it up and you have maybe a way of thinking that if you are open and you define what that is within your team, if you're open and this is a good shot and you define what that is within your team, for you're allowed to shoot it. I just feel like you get a little bit more time in the gym with your players, a little bit more buy-in of when I'm practicing shooting in practice, I know that this is actually a shot I get to shoot in a game. Yeah, it becomes a little easier there.
Yep. No, I agree 100%. Like for me, the light bulb went off as a coach when, I've coached guys my whole life as far as in the team setting, and they're no different than me and probably you and your friends growing up. After practice, everyone was trying to dunk, whether we could or not, right? Whether I was still like that far underneath the rim with my hand, I'm trying to dunk. And it just, I'll never forget, I think my end of my first season, maybe my second season as a coach, and one of my assistants pulled me aside and said, Matt, they're all shooting. Like practice was done. They could go home. They could practice their, jelly layups, try to dunk even though they weren't. And we had a gym full of players shooting. And that's when the light bulb went off. Like, oh, they understand when they level up as a player, as a decision maker, they're going to be able to do that more in games. And so, yeah, unlocking that for our players and just seeing that. It wasn't forced. I wasn't telling them to shoot more. Assistant coaches weren't on them to shoot more. When our players do it because they want to, that intrinsic motivation, shoot, I don't care if we win or lose every game, like that's what it's all about. And I do think the more intrinsic motivation, the more games will win. But regardless, we've taught them a life lesson that so often as high school athletes we miss out on.
I'm going to ask you this question because I don't really know the answer. And I'm trying to think of the other side, because not every coach wants to play fast or doesn't think that And PGC really helped me think about what is truly fast. You're playing fast when the defense is uncomfortable. Just
Mm-hmm.
jogging the ball up the floor, but then that possession taking a long time on that end isn't playing fast. It's about how long the possessions are offensively are you taking as well. So even though I believe in doing that and I don't see many negatives, I'm going to ask you, what are some of the negatives or drawbacks to playing a fast style of basketball?
And that's really, really good. I would say the two that I've run into the most often would be, number one, um, frustration can rise, especially early in the season. Especially if we're new to this. I forget my first year at Cassidy High School, which was about 5 years ago. Um, I had to prepare because I'd been through this rebuild a couple of times, putting in a system that's quicker, uncomfortable for a lot of people. I had to tell them, hey, listen, our first 3 or 4 weeks of games might be pretty gosh darn ugly, right? Like there's going to be a lot of turnovers. There's going to be a lot of missed shots. There's things you're going to want to yell from the stands. And I get it. I probably want to yell those things from the sideline as well, but trusting the process. And so sometimes when you play fast, if you don't see the results right away, you tend to give up and go back to playing slower or playing more methodically when in the court. And so I would say that'd be a drawback. I would also argue we have that drawback with other offensive and defensive systems, but that's a big one, right? Like it's not working.
Yeah.
Understand
Oh,
it.
like if Wes Watson from McKinney, they just made a deep run and actually just played in the 6A UIL championship game.
Wow.
And so just an incredible year for him. He is one of the best coaches that I know. We were 8-21 one season at McKinney. Wanted to do something different, had some smaller guys, but that were skilled. So we incorporated dribble drive. We wanted to shoot the three more. And he really loved this pressing style of play. So we put those two together. And, oh, man, it was one of the first games of the year. And I had never played this way as a player. So it was also a little foreign to me as a coach. And so we're sitting there and we're pressing and they're breaking it and they're scoring. And I can remember Wes looking down at me and being like, do we need to get out of this? And I'm not saying it was all me, like, no, coach, we got to stay. I felt the exact same way, but I felt like in that moment that him and I both needed to at least fake it and show this because we had never done it before. You and I, 9-10 years into playing fast, we can clap and cheer through those moments of kind of bad basketball early on because we know what it will turn into in December, mid-December, but at that time, it just made me transport back in time of him looking at me. Do we need to do something? Do we need to get out of this? And no, coach, just keep going.
You got to fake it till you make it, right?
Fake it.
Just believe in it, see what happens. I love it.
What was the one more thing about that too? If coaches are looking to make this change ever, and Matt's a great guy to talk to about it and get deeper. Tyler Costa, another guy, great guy with savvy basketball to talk to about it and get deeper into it. Is in your parent meetings. I would just encourage at the beginning of the year, the last 10 years, I've said, parents, in the first few games, like Matt said, first few games or even into early December, turnovers are going to be high and shooting percentage is going to be really low, but that's okay. And if you hear me clapping and encouraging and telling them that it's great when we're turning the ball over and we're missing shots, it's because they're trying to do exactly what I want them to do. And I know that and it's about, I don't know what date, but mid-December, that flips to where turnovers are now low and shooting percentages raising. It's getting higher. So I would encourage I think it's a good thing to help the parents understanding and why they're seeing what they're seeing. I think that's good to do.
Yeah. Actually, one thing that I heard Pete Carroll say recently that I wish I would have had this to share with parents in the past was he said as coaches too often, and I think this applies to parents, anybody who cares, right? Coaches care about their players, parents care about the players. We both care. Sometimes we don't see eye to eye, but whatever, that's a conversation for another time. But what Pete Carroll said was, as coaches, you want to coach the results and not the process. And so if the ball goes in, it's a good shot. If we turn it over, it's a bad possession, right? But he said, no, like we just might we might see the right decision or know what to do. We're just a half second too slow, or we don't quite know how to get the ball where we want it. And so that's just like, man, just like bomb dropped on me. Like, stop coaching the results and always coach the process. Right? Because like you said, Matt, we're playing for the end of the year. At the beginning, like, who cares? Lose a couple of games in November and December that maybe you could have won anyway. But like, I'll give other coaches those because I know we're going to win games in February and March that people don't expect us to. And that's when the season really flips.
It's just like what Christian rapper Trip Lee said: trophies don't go to the ones that have a good beginning.
Yeah.
The great philosopher Trip Lee.
I love it.
But on that note too, how many posters, slogans, quotes do we have or say that we don't follow? If you have a poster in your locker room that says it's about the process, but you're resulting hardcore every day, you just you'll lose credibility with your players, because they're going to walk in the locker room, they're going to see something, they're going to be like, well, that's just the exact opposite. We have joy in our locker room, the word joy. And if I am sucking the joy out of everything, every practice, every game, every meeting, then there's going to become a disconnect. And I just think it's a good reminder.
That's really good. One thing I had to learn as a coach was sometimes I had too many sayings and posters and motivational things up in the locker room. And it was almost like not only just overwhelming, but like a little overkill, right? Like authenticity is something that's very important to the players that we coach. And so even my last 2 years as a coach, we had one sign up in the locker room. Now, our whiteboard, our motivational thought, our thing might change. I told them day to day, week to week, whenever I need something new. But we had one sign, and it was the Urban Meyer thought, living above the line, because that's something we had struggled with the team. Like, we were very, very bipolar in the way, and that's not trying to belittle anyone who struggles with that, but just we would show up one way one day and then show up another way different.
Inconsistent.
Yeah, just completely inconsistent. So just every time you walked out of the locker room, you saw one sign, and it was black and white, no frills, no anything else, and it says, "What do you choose today?" And it had a line drawn across it. And so that was like, now, like you said, Matt, now we can all focus in. Me as a coach, the head coach, my assistant coaches, our players, if we have a manager or two, like, we all have to choose. And now every decision we make, every reaction, every emotion is funneled through, how are we living today? We're living with a line. And same thing with you guys with joy. Like, every decision that I'm making right now, am I choosing joy in this moment? Am I letting joy influence and filter through the words coming out of my mouth, the language I have, how hard I'm going right now in this drill? So yeah, I love that, being able to just like go back to that one thing that coaches, players, administrators, parents know is most important for our program.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.